It's raining out there, heavily. Even the ducks have had enough and have scrawled an illegible complaint to the weather gods. The trouble is, we can't go out and film in this sort of weather, for obvious reasons. However, rather than posting nothing at all this week, which some viewers would consider an improvement, we thought we'd pull together some of those unused bits of footage from previous excursions that, for one reason or another, didn't quite make it into the finished films. Mostly because they were boring, alright? More boring than usual then. Stuff, for example, such as this. Just north of Garstang, peering over the hedge like some anorexic Easter Island version of Kilroy, stands the ancient Cabus Cross. It's about 11 foot tall, at a guess. The late Hedley Lawrenson informed us, when he was still alive, obviously we haven't started using mediums yet, that we discovered the Cabus Cross in the late 1950s, when we were doing some excavations on the Lancaster to Waltondale Roman Road. It was doing duty as a gatepost on Kilntrees Farm. When the column was placed in the empty base, it fitted. Closer inspection revealed that about halfway up was a crudely carved cross, similar to the ones etched into the cross shaft at Forton and the altar stone at Newers Wood. We've covered both Forton and Newers Wood before. You'll just have to watch our earlier films if you want to know more. It seems likely, therefore, that the Cabus Cross originally marked the site of a keel. We've covered keels before as well. It's your own fault if you weren't paying attention. So, there you go. Random and not very exciting, but informative and educational, I'm sure you'll agree. We might just get away with this. Onwards and southwards then. Whitewell is an old-world village nestled in a valley next to the River Hodder, known locally, apparently, as Little Switzerland. It consists of an inn, several cottages, and a church. Whitewell's been around for a long time in one form or another. Bronze Age relics were discovered in the fairy caves there some years ago. Roman remains have also been unearthed in the area, along with a Roman road. The forecourt of the manor house used to be a marketplace once. It's now an inn, although it still holds the fishing rights for 6 miles along the River Hodder. By now, you're probably starting to understand why we didn't include this stuff in our other films. However, it's still raining out there, so you'll just have to put up with it. We were supposed to return to Rawcliffe Hall for a personal tour of the interior by its owner, but as is often the case, we got distracted somewhere along the lines. Nowadays, the hall sits at the centre of a caravan park. However, its importance and history are far more significant than that. In 1249, for example, the hall was owned by Theodore Walter, the governor of Amounderness and brother to the Archbishop of Canterbury. Theobald was also the butler to Prince John. All royal servants at the time, including the much sought-after position of Keeper of the King's Stools, a bit of an odd thing to collect, being aristocrats. His subservience paid off when King John made him the butler of Ireland, a position that rewarded him with 1/10 of Ireland's entire alcohol revenue. And if you know anything about the Irish, then you can imagine that that came to rather a lot. The oldest part of the hall is the courtyard, which we didn't actually film, dating from 1154. According to the law, the ancient cobbles must never be touched or altered in any way. As a result, nobody knows what lies beneath. We can hazard a guess, though. The courtyard was where local prisoners were put on trial. The mullioned windows overlooking it being the windows from which the prisoners received their sentences, the sheriff at one and the squire at the other, both of whom often watched gratuitously as the sentence was carried out. During the reign of Henry VII, records inform us, one Anne Sherborne was married to John Bottler, one of Theobald's descendants. Somewhat surprisingly perhaps, John was only 10 years old at the time. Michael Jackson must be turning in his grave. Marrying minors, i.e. children under the legal age, as opposed to fat, sweaty men who dig coal seams with candles strapped to their heads, for political gain, however, obviously wasn't enough to secure the Butlers' finances. In 1591, Henry of Larbrecht charged Robert Butler with trespassing in his fishery, catching 12 salmon, 20 flukes and about 100 eels, worth around 10 shillings. That's enough about Rawcliffe Hall for now. We'll save the rest for if we ever go back for that guided tour. Onwards to the north end of Grizedale Beck, continuing from where a previous footnote detoured up Nicky Nook. There's a Roman road up here somewhere, or so the history books tell us. To be honest, it's a bit hard to believe given that sections of it run into sheer cliff faces and other parts just look like half-demolished walls. There's an older, pre-Roman Celtic road up Harris End Fell though. It's known as the Bonny Pad, which stems from a Saxon root word meaning the summoning, which sounds sinister, if you ask me. There's a little known holy well up there alongside it somewhere as well. The locals call it St. Helen's Well, named after the Emperor Constantine's mother, no doubt. We've never found it, but then again we've never looked very hard. That's about all we have to say on this subject, because we didn't really take enough footage. Right, that should do us for now. Wasn't that bad, was it? Don't answer that. It's still raining out there, so click like, subscribe, etc. And if it's still chucking it down this time next week, you'll probably get more of the same. Or we might just take the week off. Leave your preferences in the comments boxes and we'll see what we can do.